Ambassador Vex'thar stood at the observation deck of the galactic survey vessel Infinite Perspective, his forearms folded in the traditional posture of contemplation as he gazed upon the small blue world rotating slowly beneath them. His scales rippled with colors of mild disdain, amber bleeding into a dismissive gray that any member of his species would immediately recognize.
"So this is it," he murmured, consulting the holographic data streaming across his retinal implants. Sol 3, local designation, Earth. Commander Threxus, his military attaché, joined him at the viewing portal. The Valorian officer was considerably larger than Vex'thar, her muscular frame encased in ceremonial battle armor that bore the marks of 17 campaigns across the galactic rim.
"The preliminary scans are complete, Ambassador," she reported, her voice carrying the clipped efficiency of military briefings. "Single dominant species, bipedal, carbon-based, oxygen breathing. Technology index places them at approximately 0.7 on the Kardashev scale. They've achieved nuclear fission, primitive spaceflight, and rudimentary digital networking. No faster-than-light capability. No unified planetary government. No detection of our presence in their system."
Vex'thar's secondary eyelids flickered in what passed for amusement among his people. A divided species without FTL technology. How quaint. And the Galactic Consortium sent us here for this?
The Pathfinder array detected unusual energy signatures 18 cycles ago, Threxus reminded him. The consortium requires assessment of all potentially spacefaring species within the fourth spiral arm. Standard protocol. Standard protocol for a backwater world, Vex'thar corrected. He waved one of his upper hands dismissively. "Look at it, Commander. They haven't even colonized their own moon properly. A handful of defunct landing sites and abandoned equipment. Their neighboring planet, Mars I believe they call it, hosts nothing but unmanned rovers gathering dust. This species is clearly stagnant, perhaps permanently so."
Threxus examined the data with more professional detachment. They did achieve nuclear capability relatively quickly by galactic standards. Some of their theoretical physics approaches consortium-level understanding, even if their practical applications remain primitive.
"Theoretical physics," Vex'thar scoffed. "Any species can dream, Commander. What matters is execution. And these humans," he pronounced the unfamiliar word with careful distaste, "appear to spend more effort fighting each other than advancing their civilization. My preliminary report will recommend Category 4 classification, minimal monitoring, potential integration into the consortium in perhaps 300 of their years, if they manage not to destroy themselves first."
And if they do destroy themselves?
Then the consortium will claim their world for resource extraction. Either way, they pose no concern. Vex'thar turned from the viewport, his robes swirling with the movement. "Prepare a contact shuttle. We should perform the obligatory first contact assessment. I want to be departing this backwater system within 2 of their planetary rotations."
"Ambassador," Threxus said, a note of caution entering her voice, "protocol suggests we observe for a longer period before initiating contact. Species in their developmental stage can be unpredictable."
"Unpredictable?" Vex'thar laughed, the sound coming out as a series of clicking whistles. "Commander, I have performed first contact assessments on 43 worlds. I have dealt with the Cressian hive mind, negotiated with the silicon-based Tamari, and survived a dinner with the Zelathian royal court. And let me tell you, their cuisine nearly ended me more effectively than any weapon. These humans are tribal primitives with nuclear toys. What could they possibly do that would surprise me?"
Threxus's mandibles clicked in what might have been skepticism, but she was too well trained to contradict an ambassador directly. "As you command, Ambassador. I will prepare the contact team."
As she departed, Vex'thar returned his gaze to the blue world below. His database had provided him with extensive information about humanity's history, culture, and current state of development. He had reviewed their wars, countless brutal affairs that seemed to accomplish little. He had studied their political systems, a chaotic mess of competing ideologies and nationalistic fervor. He had analyzed their art, their science, their philosophy.
Nothing he had seen impressed him.
The Galactic Consortium had existed for over 12 million years, encompassing more than 4,000 spacefaring species across 3 galaxies. They had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations that made humanity's brief existence look like the flickering of a candle. In the grand tapestry of galactic history, Earth was barely a loose thread, easily overlooked, easily forgotten.
Vel'thar had no reason to believe his assessment would be anything other than routine. He was, as he would later reflect during many sleepless nights, catastrophically wrong.
Part 2. First Contact.
The contact shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with practiced precision, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it invisible to human sensors. Vel'thar had selected the landing site carefully, a remote area in what humans called the American Southwest, far from major population centers, but close enough to a military installation that they could be certain of encountering official representatives rather than random civilians.
The shuttle set down in a cloud of displaced sand, its landing struts extending to anchor it firmly to the alien soil. Vel'thar checked his translation matrix one final time. It had been calibrated using intercepted communications and should allow for reasonably accurate communication with the local population.
Remember, he instructed his team as they prepared to disembark. We are here to assess, not to negotiate. Make no promises, offer no technology, and above all, do not underestimate the capacity of primitives for irrational violence. Threxus, you and your guards will maintain a defensive perimeter. If there is any sign of hostility, we evacuate immediately. The ramp descended, and Vel'thar stepped onto Earth for the first time. The air was thinner than he preferred, and the gravity slightly stronger than the consortium standard, but neither proved particularly uncomfortable. The sun, a young yellow dwarf, hung in a sky of startling blue, and the landscape stretched in endless waves of red-brown rock and scattered vegetation. "It's rustic," Vel'thar observed. "Multiple heat signatures approaching," Threxus reported, her hand resting on her sidearm. "Vehicles, fast-moving. I count 6. No, 8 units."
Let them come. We expected a response to our landing.
Within minutes, the first of the human vehicles came into view. Large, angular machines painted in desert camouflage, bristling with what Vel'thar's implants identified as projectile weapons. Primitive, but potentially dangerous at close range. More concerning were the aerial units that followed, rotary wing craft that circled the landing site with obvious aggressive intent. The vehicles formed a rough semicircle around the shuttle, and humans began emerging from them. They were smaller than Vel'thar had expected, but they moved with a coordinated efficiency that spoke of professional training. Their weapons, chemical propellant projectile launchers, according to his analysis, were aimed at the contact team with unwavering focus. One human stepped forward, distinguishing himself from the others through bearing, rather than any obvious difference in appearance. Vel'thar noted the insignia on his uniform, cross-referencing it with the database. A colonel, apparently. A mid-level military officer. "I am Colonel James Mitchell, United States Air Force," the human announced. His voice was steady, betraying no fear despite the obvious impossibility of what he was witnessing. "You are in restricted airspace. Identify yourselves and your intentions." Vel'thar stepped forward, activating his translation matrix. "I am Ambassador Vex'thar, representative of the Galactic Consortium, a governing body of more than 4,000 spacefaring species. We have come to assess your world and determine humanity's readiness for potential membership in the greater galactic community." The colonel's expression flickered, surprise, Vel'thar assumed, followed by what might have been skepticism. "Galactic Consortium, 4,000 species." He paused. "You're telling me you're aliens, and you've come to, what, test us?" "To assess you," Vel'thar corrected. "The distinction is meaningful.
A test implies the possibility of failure with consequences. An assessment is merely observational.
And if we fail this assessment?
You cannot fail in any meaningful sense. The assessment merely determines the timeline and nature of any future interaction. Based on our preliminary analysis, humanity is likely to receive a Category 4 classification. Minimal monitoring, potential integration into the consortium within 300 of your years.
The colonel exchanged glances with several of his subordinates. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication that Vex'thar's training failed to interpret. Category 4, the colonel repeated. That sounds pretty low on the scale.
It is an accurate reflection of your current technological and social development, Vex'thar explained, allowing a note of condescension to enter his translated voice. You have not achieved faster-than-light travel. Your planet remains politically fragmented, and your species has yet to establish any permanent presence beyond your own world. By consortium standards, Earth is a backwater world, remote, underdeveloped, and of minimal strategic or economic significance.
The colonel's expression changed. It was subtle, a tightening around the eyes, a slight adjustment in his posture. Vex'thar's implants flagged the change as potentially significant, but couldn't provide a clear interpretation. A backwater world, the colonel said slowly. Minimal significance.
Please don't take offense, Vex'thar said, though his tone suggested he didn't particularly care if offense was taken. These classifications are based on objective criteria applied uniformly across all assessed species. They carry no moral judgment.
Of course not. The colonel's voice had gone flat, emotionless. We're just primitives, after all. Tribal creatures with nuclear toys, I imagine. Nothing to be concerned about. Vex'thar felt a flicker of unease. The human's words echoed his own thoughts too closely for coincidence. I don't believe
Ambassador, the colonel continued, I think there may be some value in a more thorough assessment. May I suggest we continue this conversation at a more secure facility? There are people who would very much like to meet you.
Vex'thar hesitated. This was not standard protocol. First contact assessments typically concluded with a brief exchange of information, followed by withdrawal and a detailed report to the consortium. Extended engagement was discouraged. But then again, nothing about this interaction had been truly standard. The humans had responded faster than expected, had deployed military assets with impressive coordination, and this colonel spoke with a confidence that seemed incongruent with his species' technological limitations. Perhaps there was more to learn here.
Very well, Vex'thar agreed. A brief extended assessment may provide valuable additional data. Commander Threxis will accompany me with a security detail. My shuttle will remain here as a precaution.
Naturally, the colonel said. His smile did not reach his eyes. I'll radio ahead. They'll be expecting you. As Vex'thar followed the human toward one of the waiting vehicles, he could not shake the feeling that he had somehow missed something important, that in his haste to dismiss this backwater world, he had failed to observe something that should have been obvious. Commander Threxis felt it too. Her hand never left her weapon during the entire journey. Part 3. The Facility. It was buried deep beneath the Nevada desert, accessible only through a maze of security checkpoints that would have impressed even consortium military architects. As their vehicle descended into the underground complex, Vex'thar found his assumptions about human technological limitations beginning to waver. The facility was advanced, not consortium-level advanced, certainly, but far beyond what their preliminary scans had suggested. The walls were lined with technology that his implants struggled to classify. Strange hybrid systems that seemed to blend human engineering with something else, something older.
I thought humans hadn't achieved significant spacefaring capability, Vex'thar said, unable to keep the confusion from his voice.
We haven't, the colonel replied. Publicly. The vehicle came to a stop in a vast underground hangar, and Vex'thar's secondary hearts began beating faster as he processed what he was seeing. Ships. Not human ships, or not entirely human.
There were craft that bore the distinctive signatures of a dozen different galactic species in various states of assembly and disassembly. Engineers in white coats moved among them, taking readings, making modifications, working with focused intensity.
These vessels, Vex'thar managed, where did you acquire them?
You'd be surprised how often people crash on backwater worlds, the colonel said. We've been collecting for quite some time. They were led through the hangar into a long corridor lined with windows that looked into various laboratories. In one, researchers examined what appeared to be a Cressian power core. In another, technicians were adapting Valorian shield technology to human specifications. In a third,
Vex'thar stopped walking.
In the third laboratory, preserved in a suspension field, floated the unmistakable form of a consortium survey drone. Not just any drone. The insignia marked it as belonging to the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, a fleet that had been lost in this sector approximately 200 Earth years ago.
We found that in 1947, the colonel said, following his gaze. Took us decades to figure out how to open it without destroying the contents. Another decade after that to reverse engineer the basic principles. The quantum entanglement systems were particularly challenging.
This is... Vex'thar struggled for words. The consortium has no record of a crash in this sector.
No, I don't imagine you would. The crew survived the impact, incidentally. We were able to establish a basic dialogue before they succumbed to their injuries. Lovely people. Very surprised to find a species on this planet that could understand their mathematics.
The consortium will...
The consortium will what, Ambassador? The colonel's voice had lost all pretense of deference. We're a backwater world, remember? Minimal significance. 300 years from any meaningful integration. Why would you waste resources investigating what happens to the occasional lost drone in a system nobody cares about?
Vex'thar's scales began cycling through colors of alarm, deep reds and purples, that signaled extreme distress to any observer familiar with his species' physiology. You've been studying us, he realized. You've been preparing.
Preparing is such a strong word. We prefer developing our potential. The colonel gestured for them to continue walking. We have some people who would like to speak with you, Ambassador. People who have been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. They emerged into a conference room that would have looked at home in any consortium diplomatic facility. A long table dominated the space, surrounded by chairs that had been hastily modified to accommodate various alien physiologies. Vex'thar noticed that several were designed for his species specifically, accurate to within centimeters.
They had been expecting him.
Seated around the table were a dozen humans, representing various governments and institutions that Vex'thar's implant struggled to identify. At the head of the table sat an elderly woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through to his very soul.
Ambassador Karan, she said, her voice carrying an authority that transcended any cultural boundaries. Welcome to Earth. I am Secretary General Chen of the United Nations Emergency Committee for Extraterrestrial Affairs. We've been anticipating this meeting for 47 years. 47. Vex'thar's analytical processes were struggling to keep up. How did you know we would come?
We didn't know specifically, but we knew someone would, eventually. The universe is too full of life for humanity to remain unnoticed forever. She gestured to an empty seat. Please, sit. We have much to discuss.
Vex'thar found himself complying almost automatically, his diplomatic training taking over as his conscious mind reeled. Threxis took position behind him, her hand never leaving her weapon, her posture radiating tension.
I assume, Secretary General Chen continued, that you came here with certain expectations, that you would find a divided, primitive species, barely worthy of notice, that you would conduct a routine assessment, file your report, and move on to more significant matters.
The preliminary data suggested.
The preliminary data showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. Chen leaned forward, her eyes never leaving his. Ambassador, Humanity learned a very important lesson from the crash of 1947 and from the other incidents that followed. We learned that the galaxy is not a safe place. We learned that there are powers out there that would view our world as nothing more than a resource to be exploited.
And we learned that our only chance of survival was to appear so backward, so insignificant, that no one would consider us worth the trouble of conquering.
You've been hiding, Velith breathed, deliberately suppressing your development.
Not suppressing, misdirecting. The technology you see in your satellites, in your intercepted transmissions, that's our public face. It's real, certainly, but it's also selective. The truth is considerably more advanced. She pressed a control on the table, and a holographic display activated, showing a detailed map of the Sol system.
Velith stared at what he was seeing.
The map showed human installations throughout the system. Not the primitive orbital stations and defunct lunar facilities he had expected, but extensive operations on Luna, Mars, several of the outer moons, and in the asteroid belt, hidden behind electromagnetic baffles and visual camouflage, invisible to casual sensor sweeps.
12 permanent settlements, Chen explained. Nearly 500,000 people living and working off Earth. A fleet of 47 vessels capable of interplanetary travel at speeds that would surprise your analysts. And as of 3 years ago, she touched another control and the display updated. We successfully tested our first faster-than-light drive.
The room seemed to spin around Velith. His implants were registering elevated stress hormones, accelerated cardiac function, and the onset of what humans might call panic.
That's impossible, he said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. You can't have developed FTL capability. The physics alone would require
exactly the kind of theoretical understanding you dismissed as irrelevant, Chen finished. You were right about one thing, Ambassador. We are very good at thinking, at dreaming, as you put it, but we're also very good at turning our dreams into reality. She rose from her chair, and Velith noticed for the first time that she moved with a subtle enhancement, biomechanical augmentation that his sensors had initially failed to detect.
Here is the situation as it stands, Chen said. In approximately 4 hours, your shuttle will transmit its scheduled status report to your survey vessel. That report can say one of two things. It can confirm your initial assessment that Earth is a backwater world of no particular significance, suitable for Category 4 monitoring and eventual integration. Or,
Velith managed.
Or it can tell the truth, that humanity is far more advanced than we have led you to believe, that we have been watching, learning, and preparing, that we represent a potential threat to consortium hegemony unlike anything you have encountered in 12 million years of galactic history. She paused, letting her words sink in. Which report would you prefer to send, Ambassador?
Velith's mind raced through the implications. If he sent the true report, the consortium would respond with overwhelming force. A species that had been deliberately deceiving galactic authorities, that had been hiding advanced technology and military capabilities. Such a species would be classified as an existential threat. The response would be immediate and total.
But if humanity had truly achieved what Chen was claiming, what would that response actually accomplish? You're bluffing, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Even if everything you've shown me is genuine, you cannot possibly have the military capability to resist a full consortium intervention. The fleets they would send would take how long to arrive, Ambassador?
Velith hesitated. The nearest consortium battle group is stationed at the nexus of Valoris. At standard FTL velocities, perhaps 8 of your months.
And in 8 months, with the resources of an entire system at our disposal and the absolute certainty that we are fighting for our survival, what do you imagine we could accomplish?
It was Threxis who answered, her voice heavy with reluctant respect. A great deal, Ambassador. The mathematics of defensive warfare favor a prepared defender with interior lines of supply, if they have even a fraction of what they're claiming.
We have more, Chen said simply.
Would you like to see?
Part 4. The Truth.
The tour lasted nearly 6 hours. They showed him the shipyards on Luna's far side, where vessels incorporating reverse-engineered consortium technology were being constructed at a rate that defied what Ve'yeleth had believed possible. They showed him the weapons research facility on Mars, where human scientists were developing countermeasures against known consortium military systems they had acquired through decades of careful observation and opportunistic recovery operations.
They showed him the training academies, where human soldiers were being prepared for conflicts that might not come for decades, or might arrive tomorrow. The soldiers trained with a ferocity and determination that Ve'yeleth had never witnessed in any species.
And they showed him the theoretical research divisions, where human minds were tackling problems that the consortium had abandoned as unsolvable millennia ago, and making progress.
How is this possible? Ve'yeleth demanded at last, standing in a laboratory where technicians were manipulating quantum states with casual expertise. You've been space-capable for barely half a century. Even with recovered technology, the learning curve should have required...
Generations? Chen smiled. Ambassador, you make a common mistake. You assume that development must follow a predictable curve, that societies progress through predictable stages at predictable rates. But that's not how humans work. We are not a patient species. We do not wait for evolution to solve our problems. When faced with a challenge, we throw everything we have at it, every resource, every mind, every moment of existence. We sacrifice, we struggle, we suffer, and we overcome.
But the coordination alone
Was the hardest part, she admitted. Convincing the nations of Earth to work together in secret, to set aside centuries of rivalry and distrust for a common purpose. It required proof, hard, undeniable proof, that the threat was real and that no single nation could face it alone. The crash of 1947 provided that proof. The subsequent incidents reinforced it. By 1963, we had the foundations of the committee I now chair.
By 1980, we had achieved true global cooperation, at least in matters relating to extraterrestrial threats.
And the public? The public sees what we need them to see, a world of petty conflicts and gradual progress, climate change debates and economic fluctuations. All real, all genuine. We are not so unified that we have solved all our problems, but also all distractions from the true scope of human ambition. Chen led him to a window that overlooked a vast manufacturing floor. You see only our strength, Ambassador. What you cannot see is the cost. The sacrifices made by generations of humans who worked in secret, who lived and died without recognition, all to ensure that when this day came, we would be ready.
Ready for what? Ve'yeleth asked. Even if you can resist a consortium intervention, you cannot hope to defeat them. The consortium controls 3 galaxies. They have resources and capabilities beyond anything you can imagine.
We're not trying to defeat them, Chen said. We're trying to change them.
Change them?
Ambassador, you asked earlier how we could have developed so quickly. The answer is that we recognized something that perhaps the consortium has forgotten, that the galaxy does not belong to any single species or alliance, that the universe is vast enough for infinite diversity, if only we have the wisdom to embrace it. We do not seek to destroy the consortium. We seek to join it, but on our own terms, as equals rather than subordinates.
The consortium does not. The consortium does not currently accept species as equals. Yes, we know. We have studied your structure, your history, your politics. We understand the hierarchy. The first species who founded the alliance, the elevated species who earned their place through conquest or contribution, and the countless lesser members who exist in varying states of servitude and submission. Chen's voice hardened. We will not accept such a position. We will not bow. We will not beg.
We will stand as equals, or we will stand alone.
That's not possible, Ve'yeleth insisted. The structures of the consortium are fundamental, ancient beyond.
Beyond change? Ambassador, everything changes. Your consortium has existed for 12 million years, but the universe itself is nearly 14 billion years old. Stars have been born and died in the time your alliance has existed. Galaxies have collided and reformed. The universe does not recognize eternal structures, only eternal change.
She turned to face him directly, and in her eyes, Vex'thar saw something that transcended species, something that resonated with the deepest programming of any sentient being.
He saw hope.
We are offering the consortium something it has not experienced in millions of years, Ambassador. We are offering it the opportunity to evolve, to become something greater than it is, to embrace a species that will challenge its assumptions, question its certainties, and push the boundaries of what is possible.
Or
to learn that even the greatest powers in the universe can be humbled by a species they dismissed as irrelevant. That the spark of determination that exists in every human heart can ignite a fire that consumes even the mightiest empires. Her smile returned, but there was an edge to it now. We would prefer partnership, but we are prepared for conflict.
Vex'thar was silent for a long moment. His entire worldview, his understanding of galactic politics, of species hierarchies, of the natural order of things, had been fundamentally shaken over the course of a single day. He had arrived expecting to assess a primitive backwater, and had instead discovered a sleeping giant that was very much awake.
"What do you want from me?" he asked finally.
"A simple thing," Chen replied. "We want you to return to your vessel and send your original report. Humanity is a backwater species, 300 years from integration, of no particular significance. We want the consortium to continue to ignore us for a little while longer."
And in exchange?
In exchange, we offer you a choice. You can leave this system and spend the rest of your career wondering what you could have been part of, or you can stay. Become an ambassador in truth rather than title. Help us prepare for the day when we announce ourselves to the galaxy, not as primitives seeking acceptance, but as equals demanding recognition.
You're asking me to betray the consortium.
We're asking you to help save it. Chen placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture of connection that transcended cultural boundaries. The consortium has stagnated, Ambassador. You know this better than anyone. The same structures, the same hierarchies, the same patterns repeating for millions of years. Species join, species are absorbed, species fade away, but nothing ever really changes. Humanity offers something different, something new.
We can be the catalyst that transforms your alliance into something greater, but only if you help us.
Vex'thar thought about everything he had seen, everything he had learned. He thought about 43 previous first contact assessments, each one following the same predictable pattern. He thought about the endless bureaucracy of the consortium, the slow decay of innovation, the gradual ossification of what had once been a dynamic alliance of countless species. And he thought about the fire he had seen in human eyes, that burning determination that refused to accept limitations, that challenged every assumption, that reached for the impossible, and sometimes, against all odds, achieved it.
If I do this, he said slowly, there can be no going back. If the consortium ever discovers what I have done, then we will protect you. You will have a place among us, Ambassador, a place of honor.
Vex'thar looked at Chen, at the colonel standing behind her, at the hundreds of humans who had gathered to witness this moment. He thought about what it had taken for them to reach this point. The sacrifices, the secrecy, the generations of struggle hidden behind a mask of mediocrity.
And he made his decision.
Commander Threxus, he said, prepare a message for the survey vessel. Standard assessment report. Category 4 classification. Recommend minimal monitoring with routine follow-up in 50 of their years.
Threxus hesitated, her training warring with what she had witnessed.
Ambassador, are you certain? The consortium.
The consortium will hear what they expect to hear, Vex'thar interrupted. What they want to hear. They will file the report, assign a junior monitor to check on this system in half a century, and think no more about it. He turned back to Chen. But I suspect that when that monitor arrives, they will find a very different world than they expect.
They will find a world ready to take its place among the stars, Chen confirmed, and an ambassador who made it possible.
For the first time in his long career, Vex'thar felt something that his species rarely experienced, something that his conditioning had taught him to dismiss as weakness.
He felt hope. Part 5. The Awakening.
50 years later, the monitor arrived. His name was Kethril, and he was exactly what Vex'thar had predicted, a junior attaché assigned to a routine follow-up mission, expecting nothing more than to confirm that the primitive humans were still primitive, and that his assignment to this backwater system was a waste of his considerable talents. The first indication that something was wrong came when his vessel entered the outer boundary of the Sol system and was immediately illuminated by targeting sensors powerful enough to blind his detection equipment. "Unknown vessel, you have entered sovereign human space," a voice announced over frequencies that should have been beyond human capability. "Identify yourself and state your intentions."
Kethril's secondary hearts began racing. "This is the consortium survey vessel, Eternal Patience. I am here to conduct a routine assessment of the species designated human, standard 50-year follow-up protocol."
There was a pause, just long enough to be unsettling.
Your arrival is expected, Monitor Kethril. You will be escorted to Earth for formal reception. Please do not deviate from the assigned flight path or engage any active systems. Any hostile action will be met with appropriate response.
Before Kethril could respond, a fleet materialized around his vessel. They were human ships. There was no mistaking the design language, the configuration of their systems, the frequencies of their communications. But they were not the primitive vessels that the consortium archives had predicted. These were warships, cruisers and destroyers, and something that his sensors classified as a dreadnought, its weapon systems humming with enough power to reduce his survey vessel to component atoms. "This is impossible," Kethril whispered, even as he confirmed his compliance with the escort instructions. 50 years? How could they possibly? The journey to Earth took 3 hours. 3 hours of Kethril staring in disbelief at the transformation that humanity had wrought upon their system. Where there should have been emptiness, there was industry. Where there should have been silence, there was the constant hum of a civilization in motion. Stations and shipyards and defense platforms, all bearing the insignia of a species that had cast off its masks and stood revealed. They had been hiding in plain sight, and the consortium had never suspected a thing. When Kethril's vessel finally achieved Earth orbit, he found himself looking down at a world that bore little resemblance to the divided planet he had expected. The night side was illuminated by vast city lights that formed a coherent pattern, a single unified civilization spanning an entire world, and in orbit around that world.
"By the Founders," Kethril breathed.
There were thousands of ships, not just human ships, though those dominated the fleet, but vessels from dozens of species that Kethril recognized. Cressian carriers, Tamari cruisers, Zolothian yachts, even a handful of Valorian battleships, their hulls bearing a combination of traditional markings and something new, something human.
"The consortium will hear of this," Kethril said, though his voice lacked conviction. "This is a direct violation of assessment protocols. This species was supposed to remain under monitoring status for another 250 years. "The consortium will hear whatever we decide to tell them," a familiar voice responded. Kethril's view screen flickered and a face appeared, a face that Kethril recognized from the historical archives. "Ambassador Coron," he said, shock evident in his voice. "You're supposed to be dead. The records indicated—"
"The records indicated what we wanted them to indicate," Vex'thar replied. His scales had faded with age, but his eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had made him one of the consortium's most effective diplomats. I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary. Humanity required time to prepare, and the consortium required a reason not to look too closely at what was happening in this system.
You were part of this? A conspiracy against the consortium itself?
Not against, young monitor. For. Humanity represents something that the consortium has desperately needed for millions of years, a catalyst for change. They refuse to accept the limitations that we imposed on ourselves. They refuse to wait centuries for the slow grind of galactic bureaucracy. They saw a universe of infinite possibility and reached for it with both hands.
Veleth's image shifted, replaced by a view of the fleet, the vast armada of ships from countless species that had somehow found their way to this once backwater world.
And they weren't alone, Veleth continued. It turns out that humanity's refusal to accept the status quo resonated with many others, species that had been suppressed, marginalized, or simply overlooked by the consortium's hierarchy. They came to Earth seeking allies, seeking opportunity, seeking the chance to be part of something greater than themselves. And humanity welcomed them all.
This is an uprising, Kethril realized. You're planning to challenge the consortium directly.
We're planning to transform it, Veleth corrected. The humans have a phrase, creative destruction. They believe that sometimes the old must be torn down so that something better can rise in its place. The consortium has served its purpose, Monitor. It maintained stability, prevented galaxy-wide conflicts, preserved countless species from extinction. But it has also stifled innovation, maintained unjust hierarchies, and crushed any species that dared to challenge its dominance.
That balance ends today.
The view screen split, showing a second face alongside Veleth's, a human face, weathered by age but still recognizable.
Secretary General Chen, Kethril whispered.
Secretary General Emeritus now, Chen replied, her voice still carrying the authority that had intimidated Veleth half a century ago. I've stepped back from active leadership, but I wanted to be here for this moment, for this message.
Message?
To the consortium, to all the species that make up its membership. We are about to broadcast across every frequency, using technology that the consortium didn't even know existed. And we are going to tell them the truth about humanity, about what we have accomplished, about what we are offering.
And what exactly are you offering?
Chen smiled, the same smile that had changed Veleth's life, that had set this entire chain of events in motion.
We're offering them a choice, she said. The same choice we offered Ambassador Koron 50 years ago. They can cling to the old ways, the old hierarchies, the old assumptions. They can try to suppress us, to destroy us, to pretend that this moment never happened. Or they can embrace change. They can accept humanity as equals, accept the species that have joined us as equals, accept that the universe is big enough for everyone.
They'll never agree to that, Kethril said. The first species alone.
We'll do what they have always done, Veleth interrupted. They will calculate the costs and benefits, assess the risks and rewards, and make the decision that best serves their interests. And their interests, I suspect, will be best served by accepting this change rather than fighting it.
How can you possibly know that?
Veleth's image expanded, showing not just his face, but the vast display behind him, a strategic map of 3 galaxies, overlaid with thousands of indicators that Kethril slowly recognized as military assets.
Because we have spent 50 years preparing for this moment, Veleth explained. Not just building fleets, though we have done that. Not just developing technology, though we have done that too. We have been building alliances, making friends in places the consortium has long ignored, cultivating relationships with species that the first species dismissed as irrelevant.
You've been building a coalition. We've been building an alternative. Chen's voice was calm, almost peaceful. A new kind of galactic order, based on cooperation rather than domination, on mutual benefit rather than exploitation, on the recognition that every species has something to offer, something to contribute, something that makes the whole greater than the sum of its parts.
She leaned forward, her eyes burning with the same fire that Kethril had seen in the recordings from 50 years ago, the fire that had never dimmed, never wavered, never accepted the possibility of defeat.
Humanity was told that we were a backwater species on a backwater world, that we were centuries away from significance, that we should be patient, should accept our place in the grand hierarchy of things, should wait our turn like everyone else. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried across light years, reaching ears and auditory organs and sensory appendages across 3 galaxies.
We declined.
Part 6. The Broadcast.
The message went out on every frequency simultaneously, a technological feat that the consortium had long believed impossible. It reached core worlds and frontier systems, consortium citizens and independent species, allies and enemies, and everyone in between.
And its words were simple. Citizens of the galaxy, Chen's voice began, we are humanity. For 50 of your years we have been preparing for this moment, for the moment when we would stand before you, not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as equals demanding recognition.
The message was accompanied by data, comprehensive, irrefutable data about humanity's true capabilities. Star charts showing human installations across the Sol system and beyond. Technical specifications for technologies that matched or exceeded consortium standards. Military assessments that revealed the true scope of human defensive capabilities.
And perhaps most importantly, testimonials from the dozens of species that had already thrown their lot in with humanity's grand experiment.
We are not here to threaten or to conquer, Chen continued. We are here to offer a choice. For 12 million years, the Galactic Consortium has maintained order through hierarchy. The first species at the top, the rest of us arranged in descending order of perceived value. This system has maintained stability, but at a cost. Species have been suppressed. Innovations have been crushed.
Billions upon billions of sentient beings have lived and died, knowing that their kind would never rise above their assigned station.
That ends today. The message explained the alternative, the alliance of equals, as humanity had named it. A new kind of galactic order where species were judged not by their antiquity or their military power, but by their contributions and their cooperation, where every voice had equal weight, where innovation was celebrated rather than feared.
We understand that this is a significant change, Chen acknowledged. We understand that the consortium will view us as a threat, and perhaps they are right. We are a threat to stagnation, to injustice, to the comfortable certainties that have paralyzed galactic progress for millions of years. But we are also an opportunity, the opportunity for something better.
The consortium now has a choice to make. They can accept this change, join us in building a new kind of galactic community, and secure their place in the future we are creating. Or they can fight. They can send their fleets against us, try to crush this movement before it spreads any further, attempt to maintain their dominance through force.
Chen's voice hardened. We hope they will choose the first option. But if they choose the second, they will learn what humanity learned long ago, that the universe does not belong to those who are merely powerful. It belongs to those who refuse to give up, to those who face impossible odds and find a way to win anyway, to those who looked at a galaxy that dismissed them as irrelevant and said, no, we will be heard. We are humanity. We are the alliance of equals, and one way or another, the galaxy will never be the same.
The message ended, and across 3 galaxies, silence fell. In the halls of power across the consortium, the reaction was immediate and varied. Some species, particularly those who had long chafed under the consortium's hierarchy, celebrated. The message was evidence that change was possible, that the eternal order of things was not so eternal after all.
They reached out to humanity through back channels, expressing interest in the alliance of equals, asking how they might join.
Other species reacted with fear. Humanity's deception, their hidden capabilities, their willingness to manipulate and mislead, these were not the traits of a trustworthy partner. If they had lied about their development, what else had they lied about? What were their true intentions?
And in the chambers of the first species, the beings who had founded the consortium 12 million years ago, there was something very close to panic.
"They must be destroyed," declared High Arbiter Zethros, his ancient form trembling with barely contained fury. "This is not merely a challenge to the consortium's authority. This is an existential threat. A species that can accomplish what they have accomplished in the time frame they have accomplished it. Such a species cannot be allowed to exist."
Destroying them may not be as straightforward as you suggest, counseled Eldest Morveth, the senior member of the First Species Council. Did you examine the military assessments included in their message? Their defensive capabilities are considerable. Propaganda. Exaggeration designed to intimidate.
Perhaps, or perhaps they have been entirely truthful, and we are facing a threat unlike any we have encountered in millions of years. Morveth's multiple eyes surveyed the chamber, taking in the representatives of the other first species. The question before us is not whether we could destroy them, though that outcome is far from certain, but whether we should.
What alternative is there? Accept their demand for equality? Fundamentally restructure an alliance that has maintained galactic peace for 12 million years?
Yes, Morveth said simply. That is precisely the alternative.
The chamber erupted in outrage, but Morveth continued speaking, his voice cutting through the chaos.
Consider the facts. Humanity has accomplished in 50 years what most species require millennia to achieve. They have done so through cooperation, innovation, and an absolute refusal to accept limitations. They have built alliances with dozens of species that we had dismissed as irrelevant. And they have done all of this while we were watching, while we were monitoring them, while we believed them to be nothing more than primitives on a backwater world.
He paused, letting his words sink in.
What does that tell us about our own capabilities, about the accuracy of our assessments, about the effectiveness of our systems? Morveth's voice grew softer, almost gentle. The truth is that the consortium has been failing for millions of years. We have been so focused on maintaining stability that we have forgotten how to grow. We have been so determined to preserve our power that we have crushed any species that might have challenged us to become better.
And now, one has risen that we cannot crush. One that has learned from our mistakes and built something that we never imagined possible. The question is not whether we accept their terms. The question is whether we have the wisdom to recognize that their terms may be better than our own.
"You're suggesting we surrender?" Zethros spat. "After 12 million years of dominance."
I'm suggesting we evolve, Morveth corrected. Something we should have done long ago. The universe is changing, Zethros. It always has been, even when we convinced ourselves otherwise. Humanity has simply reminded us of that fundamental truth.
The debate continued for hours, then days, then weeks. Messages flew back and forth between the consortium and the alliance of equals. Threats were made, ignored, and retracted. Military forces were mobilized, then stood down. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next.
Epilogue: The New Order. In the end, it was not a battle that determined the fate of the galaxy, but a handshake. The ceremony was held in orbit around Earth, in a station constructed specifically for the occasion. Representatives from thousands of species gathered to witness the moment when the old order officially gave way to the new.
Eldest Morveth, speaking for the consortium's first species, approached the human delegation. He was ancient beyond human comprehension, a being who had witnessed the birth and death of stars, who had helped shape 12 million years of galactic history.
And he bowed. "On behalf of the Galactic Consortium," he said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber, "I acknowledge the Alliance of Equals as a legitimate partner in galactic governance. We accept your terms of mutual recognition, equal representation, and cooperative development. We agree that the old hierarchies must give way to new structures, that the old patterns must yield to new possibilities."
He raised his head, and in his ancient eyes there was something that the gathered observers had never expected to see: respect.
Humanity, you have accomplished something remarkable. You have reminded us that change is not merely possible, but necessary. That the universe rewards not those who cling to power, but those who have the courage to reach for something greater. We look forward to learning from you, as we hope you will learn from us.
Secretary General Chen, no longer emeritus, having been called back to active service for this historic moment, stepped forward to meet him.
On behalf of the Alliance of Equals, she replied, we accept your acknowledgement and your partnership. We have never sought to destroy the consortium, only to transform it, to help it become something worthy of the galaxy it claims to serve.
She reached out her hand, that simple human gesture that had somehow come to symbolize so much.
Together, she said, we will build something that neither of us could have built alone. A galaxy where every species has the opportunity to reach its potential, where innovation is celebrated rather than feared, where the measure of a civilization is not its power, but its wisdom.
Morvith took her hand, and across 3 galaxies, a new chapter began. Final note: Valith Quran lived to see the new order take shape.
He served as one of the chief architects of the transition, using his deep knowledge of consortium politics to help navigate the countless complications that arose. He witnessed the integration of hundreds of species into the Alliance of Equals. He watched as humanity's influence spread across the stars, not through conquest, but through inspiration.
And on the anniversary of that first contact, that day when he had descended to a backwater world expecting to find primitives and had instead found the seeds of a revolution, he returned to Earth.
The planet had changed, of course. Its cities now reached toward the stars. Its population had spread across the solar system. Its influence extended to the farthest corners of the galaxy. But the fundamental character of humanity remained the same.
They still dreamed impossible dreams. They still refused to accept limitations. They still believed, against all evidence, that they could change the universe.
And they had proven that belief correct.
Valith stood on a hillside overlooking the city that humans called New Geneva, watching as the sun set over a world that had transformed everything he had ever known. Chen was there beside him, older now, but still carrying that fire in her eyes.
Do you regret it? She asked. Your choice 50 years ago?
Valith considered the question carefully. He thought about his career, his people, the life he had left behind. He thought about the consortium that had raised him, that had shaped his entire understanding of how the galaxy worked.
And then he thought about what that galaxy had become, what humanity had helped it become.
No, he said finally. I regret nothing. How could I? I was present at the moment when everything changed, when a species that we dismissed as irrelevant proved that greatness is not measured by age or power, but by the courage to dream of something better.
He turned to look at her, and in his alien eyes there was an emotion that transcended species, gratitude, wonder, and something that humans called hope.
They called Earth a backwater world, he said. They never repeated it.
Chen smiled.
No, she agreed. They never did.
And across the galaxy, humanity continued to dream.
The end.